Hey everyone, Brendan Snyder here. How are you? Thanks so much for joining me and welcome to New Music Finds, where I like to collect together all the different things that I've picked up over the past week. I've got 14 different things to run through with you guys, and I get it from different places like my local record store, but also online retail like Amazon, eBay, and more. And this particular week, I got a little bit of something from everywhere. So I'll be breaking all that down and going through it with you. We're going to be kicking off with new releases in just a bit here. But before we get started, if you're new to my channel and haven't already hit the subscribe button, please do. Also leave a comment, hit like. All those things do help support my channel. I'd greatly appreciate it. And of course, as an added bonus, if you turn on notifications, you'll never miss an episode and stay up to date on really cool things like this with new music finds, hopefully turning you on to something new and or at least reminding you about stuff you got in your own collection. So as I said, we're going to kick off with new releases, and the first one up was kind of a major one, although it seems to be running a little bit under the radar because I haven't heard a lot of people talk about it. I'm a bit surprised here. We got the first new Thin Lizzy album in 42 years. Now, while it's not brand new original music, it does feature Phil Lynott, it does feature Brian Downey, and it does feature Eric Bell, the three original members of Thin Lizzy. It's called Acoustic Sessions. As I said, first new thing they've released in 42 years since Thunder and Lightning in 1983. And I have done a full review of this, where I go into a lot more detail than I will in just a minute. So I'm going to leave a link for that in the description if you want to check that out. But bottom line is it collects together, or pulls from, I should really say, songs from their first three albums, which have the three original members playing on it. But what's different about this is where they pull the vocals from Phil Lynott and they pull the drums from Brian Downey. They brought the original guitar player, Eric Bell, back in to record acoustic guitar parts to it. And then there's some embellishment in there with orchestration and stuff like that. In order to create this Acoustic Sessions, these songs never were like that back in the day. So these are new Thin Lizzy songs, recordings, whatever you want to call it, but featuring the three original guys. It's just how they created it and how it came to be. And I sort of see this like the remix albums or the alternate edition albums that some bands have been doing. But it's a really cool way to hear something classic, to hear something that was old or previously recorded by the band in a new way, much the same way that those remix albums are. But in this case, this really is something new because acoustic versions of these songs did not exist. They may have had underlying acoustic elements in the original recordings, but now they're actually an acoustic edition of that song. So very, very cool. I highly recommend it. I found it to be really, really interesting and a unique listen, and I think it further enhances their legacy. So I think it's a worthwhile addition to their catalog. All right, the next thing I picked up was the Ferrymen, Iron Will. This is their fourth studio album, and if you're not familiar with the Ferrymen, it's kind of a super group. We've got Ronnie Romero on vocals, who's played with just about everyone at this point, but he's most notable for having come to light playing with Ritchie Blackmore in Rainbow, and then he sang for Vandenberg. He's also doing Sunstorm now, having taken over for Joe Lynn Turner, another former Rainbow guy. We have the guitar player is Magnus Carlsen, and he may not be as prominent in name as he is in all the different projects that he's been part of, but he's, or was, I should say at this point, because I don't think he currently is, was part of Primal Fear. He has his own band, Free Fall, but he is one of those guys that plays on a lot of different recordings, and so I knew his name long before he ever did this as just a guitar player that popped up, backing up a lot of different people. And then drummer Mike Tirana, who's played with Rage and Axl Rudy Pell. And again, one of those guys that name I had seen in a lot of different, it's kind of a journeyman drummer, having moved around to a lot of different artists. And the three guys coming together to form the Ferrymen. And this is a real group. The material is written by these guys, recorded by these guys. So this is not one of those Alessandro Del Vecchio projects where he writes everything and then people just come in and record it. This is actually a band. And it is on Frontiers Records, but This album here may well be their best. I have to say, so far, while I know it is new, I am enjoying this even more than I have the first three releases, although I've really enjoyed those as well. So if you like your melodic metal, if you like your sort of I mean, it's got a flair of the symphonic metal to it, but it really is in the melodic metal vein, but that European style metal. Ferrymen is a great band that you should definitely check out. Now, one that I didn't know that was getting reissued, and I only found out when I put together my latest What Just Dropped episode for you guys from this past Friday. And it's one of my favorite videos I put together for you guys because I'm always discovering stuff in it. I try to track all the new releases, whether it be reissues or actual new material that's coming out for you guys. And of course, I find stuff along the way. But then when I'm going back and I'm looking at everything in order to compile the what just dropped, because there's always more things that come out than information that I have that is promoting it in advance, I always find something. And I found this. The group Viking, who's a US thrash metal band. This release here was their 1989 second studio album called Man of Straw. And I didn't know that this was getting reissued. I had long since known of this band. I don't know that I'd ever seen a CD edition, although one was probably out. But I'd only ever seen this band and their album on vinyl and long wanted a CD copy. Well, Brutal Planet Records has reissued this along with their debut, Do or Die, which is from 1988. So if you do like old school, original US thrash metal, the band Viking is one of those cool groups. And you might know the name Brett Erickson. He's the guitar player. He went on to play with the band Death Angel. The rest of the guys, I don't know where they might have gone or what they might have done. I know some of them went off and did entirely different things other than music. But musical wise, that is sort of their claim to fame at this point, that guy went on to play guitar for Dark Angel. But yep, cool US thrash metal getting reissue. Recommend that as well. And then hopefully you were able to check out the video that I did talking about the new Tiger Tales box set with the original drummer, Ace Fincham. Thanks to him and shout out to him for coming on my channel to talk about this box set that just came out this past Friday. Give us some cool stories, some behind the scenes stuff about what went on. And of course, just stuff that he's done throughout his life, because he's actually been in the Tiger Tales lineup at 2 different times. Now, this box set here, called For a Few Dollars More, is the Archives Volume 1, which hopefully means we're going to be getting a second box from them. But this spans 84 to 1991, which is their heyday. Their original run went a bit longer till 1996, but Ace left after 1991. So this collects together that original run, and it's all the stuff that he was part of on here. And I think it's a nice place that they broke it with the what I call the original lineup of the heyday era. So debut album Young and Berserk from 87, Young and Crazy from 87, then Berserk, which was from 1990, and that had different vocalists on. The first one had Stevie James, and Berserk had Kim Hooker on it. Both great albums in their own right. And then the second disc collects together 5 EPs, plus some other stuff that came from an album called Bonsai. And the Bonsai album in 1991 was a collection of material, songs, A-sides, B-sides, that sort of stuff. And this is just really the same thing, but breaking it down. It's got a little bit extra stuff on it that wasn't on Bonsai. And each of the albums themselves have a little bit of extra bonus content as well. So you not only get those albums on here, but you also get some bonus material as well. And of course, it comes in one of those cool clamshell style boxes put out by HNE Records, which is a subsidiary to Cherry Red Records, and certainly shout out to them for putting this together as well. All right, so moving on though to the stuff that I ordered, and I'm always looking for new things and stuff that I've been collecting over the past few weeks. If you've been watching the last few episodes, and I've been on a big power metal, thrash metal, just metal in general kick. And last week I showed you guys this. I picked up the vinyl edition of the Lee Aaron album called Call of the Wild. And I think this was her third studio album. I could be wrong. But I picked that up, and that was actually at the suggestion of one of the guys you've seen in some of my sound exchange session videos, John. And, he's just one of the peanut gallery guys, hangs out, makes comments and that sort of stuff. But he loved the early Lee Aaron stuff. And I was looking at that album. He was really talking it up. And I decided to give it a whirl, and it turned out to be really great. Now, I already owned one album called Body Rock. And I picked this up way, way back when I was having a kick, getting into female-fronted rock and Canadian rock. And it just fit the bill for me at the time. But it never really moved me to the degree that I needed to get more of it. And when I heard this and found out that, before she did the stuff that was the more pop rock stuff, like that later album, Body Rock, she was actually a metal queen, which of course is the name of her second album, but starting with Lee Aaron Project. Now, this is an alternate album cover, probably a reissue because the regular one doesn't look anything like this and just has photos of different people that played on the album, because it's kind of a who's who of Canadian artists. So we've got Rick Emmett from Triumph on here. We got, I think his first name is Rick, also Saunders. So of the band Saunders, playing guitar on here, and I forget who the rest of the people are, but there's just a number of different guys like that that played on her debut album. So picked that up, and that was pretty good, but in fact it was Metal Queen, and an album I had actually steered clear of because I thought the front cover of it was fairly cheesy, having her in that fantasy garb and the sword and all of that sort of stuff. Turns out the album's actually great. I love the music that's on this. Not sure why sometimes, and this is a thing that Canadian label Attic and Unidisc, which is the label that's done this, some of her reissues are in jewel cases and some of them are in the cardboard case. And they're not the same size. The cardboard is taller, the cardboard is smaller. Kind of bugs me, but ordering the quote import reissue, I got this in jewel case, and then I was also getting some like this. But if you've never checked out her stuff, definitely check out the second album and Call of the Wild. Like I said, I'm pretty sure it's the third album. If I'm getting them confused, I apologize. But I like the LP so much, I decided to get a CD copy of it. And so these two albums are my favorite. I've been enjoying these things so much that it made me dig Body Rock out. And I did enjoy it. So I decided to go ahead and pick up Some Girls Do, which actually came out after Body Rock. And it continues that vein. And it's nothing like the Metal Queen and Call of the Wild albums, but it's still good. Late 80s, early 90s rock. It's 1991, I think, was the release of this. So picked up 4 Lee Aaron releases for my collection. I'm missing one of her albums, and I think it was a self-titled one. I think it's the 4th one. It came out before Body Rock, which would then make that the 5th, and then the last one I just did the 6th, I guess. I'm still figuring out the whole history of Lee Aaron, but definitely enjoying that. That was a fun one. And then again, past stuff I was picking up, you saw that I got off on a tangent, went down the rabbit hole for Merciful Fate, King Diamond, and then I showed you guys this one here, Force of Evil, side project where it's made up of Merciful Fate and King Diamond members, but with a different singer. Incidentally, the singer that's in here has now since joined a band called Artillery. More on that later. But a lot of you guys mentioned this, the Dinner Sherman release, which I went ahead and picked up too. And by the time a lot of you guys were mentioning it because you had seen this one, I had already found this one. It's just that I collect all the stuff together for a whole week before I show it to you. So I had picked this up. And I have to say, out of these two, I definitely like this a lot more. This has that Merciful Fate sound, more of that new wave of British heavy metal sound than this did, which is more sort of modern, late 90s, early 2000 era style metal music. Both are very good, but yeah, I definitely like this, so I was glad I found it. And I know there's a second album of this, there's an EP for this, and at some point I hope to be able to hunt that stuff down as well. All right, so I was just talking about Artillery, and they were a new wave of British heavy metal group, and I think they're from Belgium. I could have that wrong. And so I have their album from back in the day, and it's good stuff. It never really clicked, meaning kicking off any sort of thing where once the band reformed, that I wanted to dig this stuff up. And I've seen this around for years, but just never picked any of it up. But I went ahead now and picked up two of their albums here, The Face of Fear and simply X or 10, because it was their, I want to say it was their 10th album, but I could be wrong. I don't think they have that many, although, again, I'm sort of newly getting back into them. I have what I believe is their debut from 85. And again, I apologize if I'm getting all this wrong, because this is just stuff I read earlier in the week, and I'm trying to remember it all for you right now as I'm showing it to you. But I decided to check out Artillery because, as I said, I knew that the singer in this group has since gone on to front them, although I think he joined in 2021. And the material of these, or after 2021, 2022 maybe, because this is 2018 and this is 2021, but the singer that's in here is not the current singer. That being said, when I checked this out, this was really good. It's definitely thrash metal, but it's got the vocals in here is a bit more sort of power metal style, but also with those higher vocals like King Diamond does, but not quite to that degree. And it was just one of those things that was like, wow, I'm surprised. I actually think I like the newer lineup version of the group than I ever did the original stuff from back in the day. You remember the label Metal Mind Records that did a whole bunch of digipack reissues of 80s European and new wave of British heavy metal artists and thrash metal, US thrash metal and stuff like that? Well, they're the ones that did that reissue of the debut Artillery album. And I was picking it up just because I was looking for some new thrash and new wave of British heavy metal style sounding stuff. And basically anything that label put out, I really enjoyed. And sometimes I enjoy just collecting by the label, because those labels you can just sort of count on. It's kind of like Frontiers Records. I've never heard anything that Frontiers has put out that I didn't like. I mean, sometimes that stuff can get a little mundane and repetitive, but I still like it. It doesn't change the fact of I enjoy that style of music. Metal Mind is one of those labels, and for the most part, Metal Blade is one of those labels, and both of these are out on Metal Blade. Not that I collect Metal Blade, but just letting you know. So for some reason, you've not checked out newer modern day era Artillery, but like thrash metal with some really good vocals, I recommend both of those to you. And talking in the recent music news roundup episodes about the reformation of Nevermore with Jeff Loomis on guitar, original guitar player, and the drummer. Original vocalist Warrell Dane has since passed away, and the bass player is not returning, but it made me search out and check out some Jeff Loomis stuff. And while I have another solo release, which I believe is his debut solo album, and I think this is the follow-up to it, although it could be in reverse there. I didn't have this one, and this one here is a gold disc reissue version of it, and also out on the Brutal Planet Records label. So starting to see a lot of that. This was Brutal Planet Records, and this as well. And it seems that this is Century Media, this is Metal Blade, so the label is doing it in tandem. And I've seen them partner up with some other labels and stuff that they've done as well. So I don't know who all owns the Metal Blade, Century Media, and whether it's all coming under one banner or what. But Brutal Planet Records having done this, and this is 2022. This being the 2024. So the Brutal Planet Records label has been around doing this for a little while at least, but only just coming to my attention. And again, I just like to keep an eye on these labels of what they're doing, because now that I know that they've been doing reissues like this of some cool stuff that I hadn't been able to get, I can actually search the label and find out what other stuff is out there for things that may have, flown under the radar. All right. And another band that I picked a couple releases up over the last couple of weeks, Cirith Ungol. And this one here, Forever Black, was their first reunion album when they came back. I had picked up their latest one, which was either 2023 or 2024. And now looks to be the last album they're going to do because they are retiring, at least from the road and everything. But I didn't have this one, and this took a little bit of hunting down, but I finally did find it and was glad to get a hold of it because, again, this is one of those bands that while I do like their original stuff, I actually have found that I like their later day era stuff even better. And that's been an interesting thing because I'm usually one of those ones that you can't beat the original run of a band. Even if I like what the newer version is doing, they'll, nothing will ever replace the original run. But I think for some bands, at least ones I didn't grow up with, like I did not listen to Cirith Ungol originally, I did not listen to Artillery originally, and maybe that's part of the reason why that I can enjoy the newer stuff even more than the original stuff. But there's just a lot of bands that are making classic sounding metal albums as good as their debut stuff, even if they've had a middle period where they weren't, or the current lineups aren't original members. It's still all really good stuff, and I've been enjoying exploring that. And really the last few months or so, digging back into a lot of those bands that I bypassed because maybe I'm not as much into the artist anymore, haven't been for a long time. Kind of, sometimes you let some bands go. I have over 13,000 CDs, so how many bands is that? Who knows? And at a certain point, I just kind of say, the last few releases haven't done much for me. I'm not going to buy this latest one. And then the next one and the next one, and I just eventually stop. But then I go back and check it out, and you wonder why you stopped because the stuff is so good. All right. Final one here. Again, an artist that I was collecting a lot of, and up until last week, I had picked up 9 different releases from the German power metal band Axxis. And this is the one that really kicked it off for me. I was at a record store run with Pete Pardo from Sea of Tranquility. I think I showed this one in the video. And it was at Rock Fantasy, the one that had all the pinball machines. But the one in the store somebody had written on the back of it, like circled certain songs and X'd out other ones. And I didn't want to spend the money buying the album that had writing on it. And unfortunately, there was a number of them like that in the store. It really bummed me out. I probably would have walked out with about twice as much stuff, but there was a lot of that. I don't even know why they brought it into the store. But either way, listening to that made me say, I kind of like Axxis. And then a few weeks later, I went to another store where I decided to pick one up and take a chance on it and fell in love with that band, and it kicked off a whole thing. Well, I finally found the original release, which is a 30th anniversary best of, where it's a 2 CD re-recording of their material from their first 5 albums. And this one here was proving very hard to find. It's one of those ones that's just very expensive out there. And I finally found a really good reasonably priced sealed copy of it. And then it was one of those things that took a couple weeks for it to get to me too. So by the time I'm getting it, I'm already at the tail end, and I already had 9 previous releases. So this makes 10. And I think I'm at the end of it where I'll just collect now based on when I find another one in a store if I'm searching for things. And there's still plenty of holes. They've got a lot of albums. So you might see stuff popping up over the next few weeks, or you might not. I think I'm kind of at the tail end run of stuff. I do actually have some more Merciful Fate arriving, and some Fair Warning, and other stuff of bands that I've been into from these past few weeks. And it's just weird how it goes sometimes, where you're not finding stuff, and then you go back to a store, and 4 weeks after you found something and liked something but couldn't find any more from that artist, then you're finding stuff. So that's just how the cookie crumbles, I guess, or how the story goes. And that's the 14 things that I picked up this past week. And I didn't really break into where it was all coming from, but some of that stuff was from Sound Exchange in Wayne, New Jersey. This was an eBay purchase. Other stuff was Amazon. Like, this was not available, and then it became available. And this was actually something that was sent to me by the record label, which I talked about when I did the interview with Ace. So it's cool where all this stuff comes from, and I get it from a lot of different places. And for those of you that don't have record stores around you and you shop online, make sure you have a number of different places that you go and you check stuff out from. And I highly recommend Amazon if you're not using it, and I definitely recommend eBay. But you guys know there's Discogs and there's other places that are out there, and there's always direct from a band's website and direct from record labels, but you can still get a lot of cool stuff. You just have to know about it. And this channel and this episode here is one of those places that I try to let you guys know about a lot of cool stuff that's not only coming out, but also other cool finds that I've made throughout the past week. All right, everyone. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Take care, and I'll talk to you real soon. Bye-bye.